On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Clallam County, welcome and thank you for coming. All of you here are going to be informed voters, which is the League's goal. I wanted to tell you about a couple of things. Some of you have been here before, you've heard this. In 2020, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of women getting the right to vote. And so the League's, yeah, pretty special. So the League has a lot of activities that will be coming up that you can go to our website and see what those are. A lot of really fun things we're going to be doing. The other thing that just came out that we got from the state, these are on the table back there. It's called Your Vote, and in the middle of that one, and the editor of this newspaper spoke at our state convention, and he's a mover and a shaker trying to get newspapers to partner with organizations like the League of Women Voters, and donated this basically. And what this is, it isn't dated, which is wonderful. It's just everything you ever wanted or needed to know about voting. And with the splurge on women's suffrage in the middle. So there's some on the table. Pick one up. If you got neighbors and friends you think might be interested, take one for them. They're free. This is our last forum for this season, and we have a hard-working committee that puts these together. It's actually quite a bit of work, and Paula Barnes over here has been chairing this committee for us this year, and probably will go home and collapse tonight since this is our last one, but I wanted to do a thank you to her for all the hard work that she's done. Your moderator tonight is Bertha Cooper. She's a longtime member, and with that, I will turn it over to Bertha.
Thank you, Linda, and good evening. Oh, did I not have it? Oh. Did you hear me? Thank you, Linda. And good evening to all of you. We're happy to see you here and your interest in the forum. Yes, I am Bertha Cooper, and I will be moderating this evening's forum. I'll start by thanking the City of Port Angeles for letting us use this fine facility. It works real well for us. I want to welcome our candidates. We congratulate all of you for running for office, and we wish all of you best of luck. For anyone who thinks they might have trouble hearing the answers or anything on the forum, we have listening devices and are happy to loan it out to you for the evening. Just signal Paula that you would like one. Okay? Thank you. We have two presentations today. We have the candidates for the 3 contested races of Port Angeles City Council, positions 5, 6, and 7 of 7 City Council positions. All council members are elected at large, meaning all voters vote within the city limits can vote for these candidates. The second presentation will be on the sales tax measure for affordable housing that will be on the November ballot. Again, for all voters living in Port Angeles city limits. Unfortunately, we were unable to secure a speaker in opposition to the sales tax measure, but a supporting speaker is here to answer your questions. Our timers tonight are Elaine Baker and Linda Mellon. If you wave because I want to be sure our candidates know that these are the people you look at to see how much time you have left. Our mic holder tonight is Barbara Vanderwerth, and she is right there. You will see her later in the program. It's the League of Women Voters policy not to allow any video or audio recording of our forums unless it's been authorized in advance by the League. Believe it or not, some members in our audiences haven't thought the policy applied to them. So if any of you, I'm asking any of you who have a need to record all or any part of this to talk with Paula Barnes and present your case to be an exception to the policy. Otherwise, if we see you recording, just wait. But do not despair. Thanks to our videographer, Tim Bry, who's obviously doing something up there, is recording this event. We will have a link to the recording on the League's website within the next few days. The website is listed on your agenda and in the banner in front of me. While you're at it, you might want to binge watch the last 3 forums we did for other candidates. They're all on there, and it has every bit of what goes on in the forum. In the spirit of that, plus the interest of unintended interruptions, I ask you to turn off your cell phones, including cameras and other devices that make noise or would cause a distraction. The restrooms are in the lobby to the right as you leave this room in the back. And in case of emergency, please exit through doors at the back of the room, here, that's it, right? And through to the lobby. A quick word about the League of Women Voters. The League is a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization whose purpose is to promote the informed and active participation of citizens in government. Our goal for this evening's forum is to provide Clallam County citizens with the information to help them be informed and knowledgeable voters. You can find out more information about the League by going on our website or just stopping at the membership table in the lobby. We will be following this agenda. Did everyone get one, or does anyone need an agenda? Because we will be happy to bring you one. Here we need, right here, at least one. Is that it? Thank you. Oh, someone just gave, well. Oh, you're going to share. Well, I think we probably have more, but that's up to you. Thank you. Thank you very much. We also, and this you can't share, we have evaluation forms, and we're asking you to fill them out and turn them in as you leave the forums tonight. It's very important for us to get input so we can continually improve these events for you and the speakers. We're asking you also to fill out evaluation forms. All right. It's time for our first panel of candidates for the 3 seats on the Port Angeles City Council. By position and in order they file for office, we've asked each candidate to make an opening statement of no more than 2 minutes. Following their opening remarks, it's your turn. Audience members may pose questions for 1 or more candidates. You may address your candidate to a particular candidate or to all candidates. However, all candidates will be given the opportunity to answer the questions. You'll be asked to come to the microphone and state your name before you ask your question. Restrain your inclination to reach for the mic. Our mic holder, Barbara, is a mic holder and isn't going to let you have it. Please be brief when you ask your question. I suggest you come to the mic prepared to state your name. If you want to state a premise, do so, but in 1 sentence, and then state your question. If your premise or question seems to be turning into a political speech, a rant, pontification, or a story, I will request that you go to your question. So please keep our purpose and time limitations in mind when crafting your questions. To help you do that, we also have little 3x5 cards available for you to make notes, to write your question down. Would anybody like a pencils, 3x5 cards? Anybody would like that? Okay, if you change your mind, just signal someone. Also, if you don't want to come to the mic, you don't have to, but you need to write your question, your name and your question down, and then the mic holder will read the question for you. So you can also do that. All right, let me see. Okay, we'll give everyone in the audience a chance to ask a question before taking a follow-up or multiple questions from the same person. The candidates will have 1 minute to answer. And then we will close the forum by giving each candidate up to 2 minutes for closing remarks, and this will happen in reverse position and filing order. The candidates were asked to introduce themselves in a 2-minute or less opening statement by covering the following points. First, why are you running for city council? Second, what are your qualifications to be a council member? And third, what do you see as the major issue currently facing the city? And if elected, how would you address it? Let me remind you again to keep your eyes on the timers and when you speak, and let's get started. First, the candidates for position 5, and we'll start with Charlie McCaughan.
All right, good evening. I'm Charlie McCaughan, candidate for City Council position 5. I've lived on the Olympic Peninsula since 1994, and I became a resident of Port Angeles in 2001. I work for Clallam County PUD. Some of my duties are environmental compliance, and I'm also one of the members of our emergency response and restoration plan team that prepares the area for a catastrophic event. I'm very excited about the future of Port Angeles with all of the projects we have going on downtown. We have about 4 projects, about $100 million in total dollars, and I'm really looking forward to, once they're completed, we'll probably be looking at a lot more tax revenue for the city. So some of the things I would like to see some attention given to towards the city is, my first concern is public safety. I feel like a lot of our crosswalks need a little more lighting or signage. I see a lot of neighborhood intersections that don't have any signage at all, and I feel we really need a code enforcement officer. I know affordable housing is going to come up tonight, so I just want to say I would prefer to see I would not like to see a sales tax increase. I'd rather see us look at more creative ways to come up with affordable housing. And I'm also aware that we need more living wage jobs. I think the city needs to continue working with the port and helping create incentives to help them attract industry to Port Angeles. And once we get industry here, we need to work really hard as a city to keep them here. My vision for Port Angeles over the next decade is one of a citywide thriving community with sound infrastructure, safe streets, safe parks, safe trails, renovated schools, rejuvenated downtown, and an expanded economic base. So I'm Charlie McCaughan. Thank you. It's a quick 2 minutes.
Goes fast. Richard Robinson.
Hi, I'm Doc Robinson. So I'm a Vietnam veteran, the director of Serenity House. I sit on the Olympic Community of Health Board for the 3-county area, Kitsap, Jefferson, and Clallam. I'm a member of 2 county planning and funding boards and a state housing board and a state youth board. The reason I'm running is because I've been frustrated with too much talk and not enough do. For example, neither the city nor the county put any general funds into 2 of the largest problems, into homelessness at all. And yet everybody's talking about it, everybody's complaining about it, and there's not enough due. So I decided to run for office. The major issue I see for our city is that we're broke, and we want to solve all these problems. So we have to get very creative in how we do that. We have to make multiple things work for us. One way is to pass that tax. When we pass that tax, then we can deal with homelessness, we can deal with drugs, and we can deal with helping our contractors gain a workforce. We can do all of this by creating a community conservation corps here of workers who can then work with the contractors to clear out some of the land use issues for the watershed and help the developers. So I look to leverage things. That's my style, is to leverage one thing into many things. The money that would be raised in the tax is about $325K, and it would, in Bellingham, that money was leveraged to $10 million, and we can do the same thing here. With that, we can help developers make affordable housing, which is what's holding them back, that $500,000 and a couple of years that it takes to get a project off the ground in this town. They tell me to stop.
Now the candidates for position 6, and we'll start with Nina Napiontek.
Hi, my name's Nina Napiontek, and I'm running for position number 6. I was born in Port Angeles, and even though I'm a 4th generation local, I divided my time between here and Bothell. At 17, I moved back to the area and graduated from Crescent School in 1999. At 21, I married my husband Jake and immediately moved to Fort Hood, Texas. And in 2006, we got to move back home to Port Angeles after he fulfilled his military contract. When we moved back home, we were both employed to the former K-Ply mill, where it only took me about 4 months to realize that mill work is pretty darn hard. So I immediately applied for the Lower Elwha Clallam Tribe's Head Start program, where I felt incredibly grateful to work for the next 8 years until I was able to stay home and raise my children. During that 2-year time frame, my children and I were out and about within the community a lot. We went to parks, we walked the waterfront trail, and we went to a lot of local festivities and events. Within the last 10 years, I've been noticing a lot of changes within our community. And since my first daughter was born 10 years ago, our family dynamics for fun have changed within the community. We still go to the parks, but I now have to look in the cracks and crevices for drug paraphernalia and other garbage while my children are begging for me to play with them. We no longer walk the waterfront trail by ourselves anymore due to being harassed and followed. And it's some of these issues that inspired me to run for city council, because I think, like many families around here, we don't only want to talk about change, but we want to come up with real viable solutions for change. Thank you.
Navarra Carr.
Hi, I'm running for Port Angeles City Council because I envision our city as a safe, welcoming place for all. I'm an engaged leader who has integrity, keeps an open mind, and I'm looking forward to reaching across divides and work collaboratively with other city and county leaders to get things done for Port Angeles. I believe in the importance of having diverse leaders who represent many skill sets and bring real policy solutions to the table. I decided to run for office because I see apathy and inaction by the current city council regarding critical issues like affordable housing, the opioid crisis, and economic strength and development. As an elected official, I will commit to taking these issues seriously and provide real policy changes. In the words of Gandhi, sometimes you need to be the change you wish to see in the world. A little bit about me. I've lived almost my whole life in rural America, except when I attended Sacramento State University, where I earned a degree in philosophy with a concentration in ethics, politics, and law. After college, I joined AmeriCorps, and I spent my first year of service as a literacy tutor in Salinas, California, where I taught migrant students how to speak and read in English. My subsequent year, I moved back home to my own community, and I served as an AmeriCorps Vista in housing and homeless services. After that year, I was hired on to work in that service industry and really provide services like grant management, finance skills, and I administered many housing programs working collaboratively with city and county partners. These are the skills that I hope to bring to Port Angeles City Council and make our city a more active and action-oriented place that really truly is a welcoming place for all people. My name is Navarra Carr, and I appreciate your vote in November. Thank you.
And now our candidates for position 7, and Martha Cunningham, please.
Hi, I'm Martha Cunningham. I'm running for City Council position 7, and I'd like to remind you what you can expect from me if I'm elected on City Council. I will bring years of experience as a teacher in Washington communities. Teachers know families, and I have a good understanding of what it takes to be a successful family. I will also use my experience as a Washington certified paralegal. I've already used my legal background in many ways, including my current volunteering experience for Clallam County as a court-appointed special advocate. That means that I stand in court for children who have been removed from families because of abuse. I will also use my experience that I have from creating 2 small businesses in Washington and Idaho. One of those was a small Montessori school. And I also, when it comes to city government, I will use my experience as art commissioner for the city of Kent, where I was on several subcommittees, and we worked to revitalize the city of Kent. My main focus for Port Angeles is to bring jobs. I believe that this approach will help us to address many of our issues. I want to tie in some of our valuable assets, such as the college, the port, the hospital, and the airport. I believe that there are many ways to encourage new businesses that will bring jobs, create new technologies, and provide knowledge for moving us into a sustainable future. I believe that we have the resources and the will to address our social issues and also to bring jobs to Port Angeles. I believe that I have a special experiences in education that will help me do this, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Brendan Meyer.
Okay, thank you guys for showing up. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting this, and happy Yom Kippur for anybody who's celebrating. My name is Brendan Meyer. I'm 35 years old. I'm self-employed. I'm a father and a husband. I own a house on the east side of town, and I see a lot of familiar faces in here tonight, a lot of people knocking on their doors and talking to them. I think my biggest asset and why I'm running for city council is, like, 6 months ago, I was walking my daughter down to Taekwondo. She goes to Taekwondo every weekday almost, and I noticed an increase in the homeless population. I noticed downtown businesses were closing, and they were putting in a new swimming pool. So I was confused on to what was going on in town, like where the priorities were. And so I decided that I needed to inform myself. So I began attending city council meetings. I attended planning commission meetings, lodging tax advisory meetings, you name it, I was attending it to find out what was going on in our town. Out of all the people running for city council, I'm the only one to attend city council meetings prior to running for city council. I'm doing it because of my daughter. I'm doing it because when we moved here 2 years ago, I fell in love with this town. I enjoy hiking, photography. Some of the things I'm looking to do is bring transparency and community outreach, better community outreach from the city to the people of Port Angeles. I don't feel like that's adequate enough. I feel like there's a lot of frivolous spending in this capital facilities plan right here that could be used better. And those are the reasons why I'm running, and I hope to earn your vote on November 5th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. Now it's your turn. And we'll take as many questions as possible from you, the audience. So start lining up at the mic. While you're doing that, I want to tell the candidates that part of my role is to fairly rotate the first answers, which I will do my best to do properly, so that there's never one person who's always answering first or one position that's always answering first. It's kind of tricky, so if I miss you, let me know. and I will apologize and do it properly. So I'd appreciate that. All right, I will start with a question.
My name is Laurel Hargis, and my question is for candidate Napiontek. At the recent PABA forum, Port Angeles Business Association forum, you stated that you would be against the property sales tax for affordable housing because it would be an added burden to families struggling to make ends meet. Yet, when the topic of downtown parking came up in the same event, you advocated for a parking garage as one way to alleviate the parking shortages. And when asked how you thought it might be funded, you said that you would be in favor of a tax to pay for it. Could you please clarify? Thank you.
All right, Navarra. I'm sorry. Nina, I'm sorry, Nina. Yeah.
So, after I talk, can everyone hear me? I feel like I'm so far away from the mic. Yes. Okay. There was a possibility to actually pay for the expenses, kind of like the beach had been paid, where 95% of it had been paid by departments of commerce and community development. So that's something I would definitely look into before adding another tax onto the community.
Okay, Navarra.
I think it's really important to look at what services are benefiting communities and the reason why we would implement another tax, and making sure that, as Brendan already mentioned, the capital facilities plan, the growth management plan, these all address the city's need or lack thereof for more parking downtown. And I think it's really valuable to look at the affordable housing tax that's going forward is a community benefit that would benefit all members of our community and really solve a community problem that I think everyone in this room sees every day. And what is our community doing to help solve that? I think we really need to step up and understand that this tax is coming from people not just in our community, but who visit our community and who our services go to. And this is one way that our community members are really able to help end homelessness in our community.
Brendan?
I am also against the tax, the qualifying tax. According to I take empirical evidence and data and then come up with my decisions. But on the fact sheet here, it says that the proposed qualifying tax, if passed, would obtain twice as much sales tax credit from the state over 20 years, which is position 1 proposes the fall ballot. The credit back to the city over 20 years is estimated $1.1 million. It's $50,000 a year, and that's contingent on whether or not the county passes the local qualifying tax. So it's only $50,000 a year, and I don't think that's adequate to addressing affordable housing.
Martha?
I am also against the tax, not because I don't want to help with affordable housing, but because I don't think it's the best way to address the problem. I believe that there are better ways to go about it, and that this tax, which doesn't have an end to it, it also doesn't have a clear picture of how this money would be spent by the city. I think it would be a much better idea to get private builders and nonprofit organizations together to build some housing, and I especially like the idea of the self-help housing, where at the end of the day, the people end up owning a home and they own the equity that they put into the home. And I think that's a much better way to go about it.
It did say 20 years on the tax in the fact sheet, just to clarify.
Richard?
I guess I'm the lonely voice up here for it. The reality is that the tax will provide a fair amount of money over 20 years. But really what's going on is the $325,000 per year that would be coming in is leverage money. It's money that we can use to develop we can help the contractors get into these properties. The reality is there's no nonprofit in town and there's no organization in town that can build profitably right now. We have to get our own state rules out of the way. Until we do that, we need these kinds of funds to put our own workforce at a cheaper labor rate, helping contractors, and we also train up our labor force at the same time. I like these kinds of solutions. It's not a very big tax, and it will help us a lot. Thank you.
Yes, Charlie.
Like I said in my opening statement, I am not in favor of the tax. I just feel like there's other ways we can find creative solutions for this problem. I think it's going to take a collaborative effort between our private developers, our community, and nonprofits. Peninsula Housing is trying really hard, but they can only put out so many houses a year, 10, possibly, maybe 15, but usually it's around 10 a year. They just broke ground on 10 more, but you know, that's just a start. There's other private or nonprofits that are trying real hard, pennies for quarters, but we just need a good collaborative effort, people to get together and see what we can come up with in the city. And like some people have said, there's just no clear picture of where that money is going to go right now. We'll see what the voters decide on November 5th. Thanks.
Next question.
Hi, my name's John Bays. My question was this. Given the current understanding of climate science, is there anything Port Angeles should do differently compared to 10 years ago?
We'll start with Martha.
Well, I don't know the specifics of that question, but I do know that the state has a climate action policy and the peninsula has a climate action policy. The city is just now adopting their climate action policy. And I don't know what we can do differently. I know that we have to monitor our water situation. We have to monitor the acidic level of the ocean. We have to manage our shoreline very carefully. We have to manage our streams very carefully. We have to watch out for fires, which are becoming more prevalent. Aside from that, I think we will work together with the county, and we'll be under whatever they decide, and then we'll specify our own needs.
Brendan.
I, unlike my opponent, believe that climate change is human caused. It's overwhelming. The scientific evidence is overwhelming. I think the city can do a lot of things. I think the city could adopt more solar rapidly. It not only help lower our usage, it'll help on negotiations with Bonneville Power Association when it comes to time to renegotiate, and our rates won't be doubled. It will also, if God forbid the cascading event happens, it's much easier to get a solar panel up and running to generate energy as opposed to 800 or 900 miles of transmission lines. I also think we can adopt the electric bicycles and electric scooters into the municipality as a form of public transportation. Those things can generate up to $600 per hour. So that's another way that we can increase revenue for the city without raising taxes. And it's good for the environment.
Charlie.
Okay, I actually attended the Climate Change Action Committee, which met last Thursday, and they've been working for almost a year now on a plan for the city. There was 12 members there. I was really impressed on a lot of the stuff they've come up with. I think the city is working very hard, and they're working in this group very hard. And I'm just some of the incentives they're coming up with are really, sound like some good ideas. They're supposed to bring some of these priorities to city council, I believe, on November 6th, and try to get this finalized hopefully by the end of the year. I don't know if they'll be able to do that, but some of the incentives they're looking at are electric car incentives, induction cooktops, heat recovery ventilation, superior insulation and air sealing, rooftop solar electric power generation, efficient heat pump space conditioning, and heat pump water heater. So they also have a list of priorities, a long list. They're really working very hard on this. So I take my hat off to the committee. Thanks.
Richard.
My first career was as a climatologist, so I do have some opinions about this. Yes, you're quite right. There are opportunities in our area for solar, wind, and current power. We could become a net energy exporter if we chose to put our minds to it, and also create an industry to power the town's labor force. We also have an emerging water storage problem. What we used to do is store as snow, and that's not going to happen anymore. We're slowly going to have our snow melt go off faster, and we're going to have to figure out ways to store water. And usually that's been dams, and we're going to need to be looking at underground solutions so we don't evaporate it away. There are lots of things we can do to incentivize small solutions. Ductless, the city already has a credit for that. We could increase that. We can increase the benefits for solar, and these are all excellent ideas. Anything we can do to incentivize people using less and becoming a net exporter themselves, that's a good idea.
Nina.
So I understand that a lot of governments are dealing with this issue, and I also believe in the climate changes that are happening. I want to focus solely on Port Angeles specific issues that we need to deal with, such as water shortages, forest fires, because those are the things that are going to affect our community immediately, rising tides. I also would be open to having open discussions with programs that are already working with environmental healthiness to see what more we can do, because there's always room for improvement, even in programs that already exist.
Navarra.
Thanks for the question. Climate change and climate resiliency of cities, I think, is one of the biggest issues that is facing our community, especially living in such a unique place with water on one side and our beautiful Olympic National Park on the other, that is facing wildfires in the rainforest. So some of the things I think we can do, right, that the city is already undertaking the climate action plan and developing that, which I think is critical. I think we also need to be worried about port resiliency and making sure that our port, right, one of our big exporters, continues to have the infrastructure to withstand any sea level rise, especially out where the Coast Guard is. I think we also need to be doing community outreach to specific neighborhoods and letting them know how they will be affected by climate change, especially our communities that are going to be affected by sea level rise on the coast, and then ones that border the national park and our forest lands that could be devastated by a wildfire. Thank you.
All right, next question, please.
My name is Gary Walters, and I live here in the city of Port Angeles, and I'm really concerned on how we feel who are homeless in our city and who are transients. We keep saying we want to build affordable housing, which I don't even know what affordable housing is. And I don't care if it's in Port Angeles or Sequim or any place else. Who are we going to build it for?
Sir, your question? Is that your question?
That's my question.
Who
yes,
are-
ma'am. Who are we going to build affordable housing
Okay.
for?
Thank you.
Are the homeless or the transients? Or
Okay.
who?
All right.
Thank you. That's all I want to know.
Richard.
So right now, first of all, who the money is spent for is a decision of the city council. Should the tax be passed? Affordable housing is affordable to who? And the city gets to define that. The second part of this is if we're going to house the homeless, we could start with the growing population of homeless, and that would be the seniors in our community who have been losing their homes and are showing up at our shelters in wheelchairs because one spouse has died. And you can shake your head, it's not happening, but we just completed meetings with the sheriff, and it is happening. We have many homeless seniors in our community who have lost their houses because one spouse has died. We have only one affordable senior housing project here, and we need more. So we could just target that group and we'd be doing positive, but which group we target is up to the city government.
Charlie.
So your question is who we're going to build them for. I think it's a pretty basic answer. It's for moderate and low-income families and individuals. I don't know how else to put it.
Okay. Navarra.
I think Doc really nailed it, that there are a lot of people in our community who are affected by a housing shortage, and that this tax would be supporting those folks. But more than that, I think that we need to look broader as a city, right? The city needs to have more than one solution to solve this problem. It's a huge issue in our community. And one of the things that Doc was talking about is with seniors, and I would also add single parents and who have children, survivors of domestic violence, and that these are folks who might have need support, that they're already in housing and they have one major event in their lives that causes them to lose their housing. And this, having more affordable housing in our community, only benefits everyone. It benefits people who are currently housed, and if something happens, they will be homeless on the streets. Thank you.
Nina.
Simply put, I think everybody should have the chance to afford housing, whether they're homeless or they're low income. The Housing Authority this last year has been helping a lot of families. They helped 6 families so far with building their houses, and plus they have 10 more in a lineup to build for 10 more families, which I think is a great program. And it's only one of the programs that are available now. The college is also having the carpentry classes help build with Habitat for Humanity. And they just recently started a house for a mother and her children that was in the paper not too long ago. So that was a great resource for her as well. Also, Randy Johnson is coming up with a pilot project that I've really been interested in listening to. He's still in the developing process of it, but it's basically taking the square footage cost of a house and cutting it in half for people, which is a great opportunity for people to be able to afford another house or an apartment.
Brendan.
I think the answer to your question, I think it's people who have, experienced a catastrophic event in their life, or people who are addicted to drugs, or people who are suffering from mental illness, or people who aren't currently working and living outside the system. But I would like to see a collaborative effort between Clallam County, Kitsap County, Jefferson County, and all the cities in between come together on this. We're on the peninsula by ourselves. They need to come together and share the burden, because you see some people here, you see them in Squim, there needs to be a collaborative effort and not just a responsibility of the people of Port Angeles. We need to come together on the peninsula to solve this problem.
Martha.
I think I can understand your frustration, because the word homeless it covers a lot of different situations. Some of the people that are homeless have problems that add to the homelessness. Sometimes homelessness brings on more problems like addiction. And other people just need some help to get out of a temporary situation that they're in. This is the City of Port Angeles part of it. I didn't print the whole thing, but this is the Housing Action Plan. This was done by professionals who were hired to determine what the housing needs of Port Angeles are going to be in the future, up until about 2025. We do have a housing shortage, and as a city, we need to address that. And there are many ways we can address it, involving zoning changes and making tax incentives for developers, working with nonprofits and private builders. There are many things that we're going to be doing.
All right, next question.
Hi, I'm Marilee Smith. 2020 is a charter review period, and I'm not sure how many of you even are aware of what this is, or if you've read this county charter, but I'd really like to know, if elected, how will you support the charter review? And if not elected, how will you support the charter review? Thank you.
All right, we will start with Navarra.
Great question. I've been attending a number of the charter review forums, and And I really encourage everyone to do so. The charter review, I think, is a really unique opportunity for both citizens in our county and also elected officials to be more involved and take an active role in our county government. I think as an elected official, one of the roles that the city has is to protect and ensure the safety of all residents who live in Port Angeles. And I think that the city can get involved with the charter review process through advocating for policies in the county that best benefit the citizens here in our community. If I'm not elected as well, I think it's a great opportunity as a private citizen to become more involved and take an active role in our county's government.
Nina.
If I'm not elected, that would be a great opportunity for me to become involved with the community as well. If I am elected, I am more than willing to have these discussions with the county and the city to, come up with ideas of what we can do to help our area. The review is sorely needed, and so I'm really happy that 2020 is going to be the year that they're finally going to be going over it, and hopefully we can come up with some more solutions. Thank you.
Martha.
Oh, I'm definitely interested in the charter review. I think that many people don't understand that they have the ability to change our form of government. So it's very important to the city council, and I believe we have someone from the city council attending the meetings and to bring back reports to us. So I'm very interested.
Brendan.
Yeah, I'll just tack on to what everybody else said. The city, charter review can adjust the needs for our county in particular. What we have is actually pretty rare. Our charter review is independent, and there's a lot of flexibility in what we can do with that. Like, it's not, they don't have it all over the country. So yeah, and we can add positions as well to the county county positions. We can add jobs that way too. So,
Charlie.
Gosh, we all kind of agree it is a great opportunity, for the community, and especially for the council to get more engaged with the community and hear how they feel about government. I would certainly be open to everyone's concerns, and if on the city council, I think that's what we have to do. We have to be open-minded and listen to what the people have to say, because it's what we're here for. And our government, it's a very important thing in the way it's run. So it's I think it would be a great opportunity.
Richard.
So the charter review is an opportunity for us to define how we act as a county, and this is important. We can even determine whether or not we're going to stay with a 3-commissioner basis, and one of the things we may want to look at is whether we do. We're not able to right now actually meet with commissioners other than one-on-one, and maybe by expanding it we could have stronger policy conversations without having to convene a full meeting. But the main thing is, you asked me how I would be involved. I would monitor as a part of the city government, and if I'm not elected, I'm really probably not going to pay a lot of attention to it, simply because I have a full-time job with taking care of homeless and trying to develop affordable housing and trying to deal with drugs in the street. Thank you.
All right, where's our next questioner? Thank you. I knew they were there.
Hi, my name's Chad, and just to try to add a little element of specificity to the discussion, I'm wondering if each of you could talk about some controversial decision that the current city council has faced and where you stand on it, if you either supported what was done or opposed it, or something that wasn't acted on that you feel strongly about, just to have some idea of kind of where you stand with current current governing operations.
All right, Brendan, you're first.
Yeah, actually, this is quite recent. They were going over the COSA, the cost of service methodology to determine what our rates are going to be, and they came to the conclusion of doubling the base rate and lowering the usage rate. So that actually winds up supplementing the people who are wasting more energy. So actually, I'm the only person up here that got up to that microphone right there during the city council meeting to air my grievance with that. I think when we push conserving electricity, that we shouldn't be supporting energy, people who use a lot of energy, and putting that on the backs of the people who are paying the base rate. You know, if you want to conserve energy, incentivize people conserving energy. Don't disincentivize it.
Martha?
Well, I guess what comes to mind is the parking issue, because I was a small business owner and I had to face parking issue. And I think that what I heard from City Council was that we should throw out all of our regulations and just see what happened. And this was very alarming to me, because I think that when you're a potential business owner and you see a city that's doing something like that, it doesn't give you a good feeling about stability. And I think that planning is very important to our city. We have to have really sensible planning. We have to go through the planning commission so that we're reliable. When businesses come here, they want to know that what we're doing makes sense. So that's.
Richard?
Okay, I'll take an opposite on that, because the recent parking is my instance. Many of you know I have this sort of phrase, talk less and do more. When Councilman French brought in a parking adjustment and it was a surprise, I thought it was perfect. We need to move, we need to help developers. And the problem with the parking isn't that we won't have to study it, we won't have to assess it. The problem is that we can't develop right now at all, because nobody can get past the demand for more parking spots. So create a different problem. Approve the parking regs, get them out of the way, and then go at the problems of, now you've got development and you don't have enough parking, let's go solve that one. Instead of holding ourselves back with no development, which is how we consistently do it in every single instance with zoning, with parking. We study ourselves to inaction. Thank you.
Charlie?
So Ed, your question was a disagreement on the council lately?
No, just agreement or disagreement.
Right.
Controversy,
Sure.
yeah.
And it definitely was the parking. It was in the paper. It was quite a long, drawn-out conversation in the council chambers. And that's, we need disagreement. You know, we can't all agree all the time on everything. And I think the biggest disagreement was just the way it was brought out on the late agenda. It was brought out with good intentions. It was just, there was a lot of disagreement on the process. So the biggest thing is, you know, this was a municipal code change that they were really looking at doing. So I think November 27th, they're going to start reviewing the entire municipal code, which has been needing updating for quite a few years. There's been quite a few things brought up about it. And I think that's a good thing for the city, and that will be part of it. You know, we got a lot of development coming up next few years, and you hate to see a change like this and it drastically create a negative effect. So stop.
Navarra?
I think what people have been talking about tonight are the two big contentious issues that have been seen recently. And I think for me, one of the big things was about the cost of service increases for utility rates. I'm one of those people who conserves energy, both because it's the right thing to do and also because I can't afford to keep all my lights on all the time. I'm a renter. I'm one of those people, I think I'm the only renter on this panel. And I think that that's important to recognize that there are a lot of people, myself included, who make good jobs and still can't afford to live in a house and have the heat on all the time. And that's something that's a real concern of mine. And what I was really pleased to see is after that initial conversation, the city went back and reanalyzed and heard concerns. And then last week, when it came back up, it had a lot more favorable outcomes, I thought.
Nina.
So my first thought is also of the parking issue that had been brought up. I feel that there was not a due process that was followed. There's a planning commission for a reason. They were handpicked by city council to vet out all the issues that could be created by trying to change a code. The planning commission and the city work very hard to make sure that that they bring council the information that they need in order to pass an ordinance. And if you don't have that critical information from the people who it's their job to vet it out, then I think you can't make a very good decision on what best way to go if you're not given all the information at the moment.
All right, next question, please.
My name is Steve Luxton. I'm a resident of the city, kind of an amateur developer. I've built and rebuilt houses in the city here. And thanks to the League of Women Voters for having this. Thank you. So we've essentially regulated ourselves out of being able to build anything here in the city of Port Angeles and all over the West. For instance, the development code of the city, I have to pay the same fees if I'm going to build a 5 or 6 bedroom house with 5 bathrooms as I do if I want to build a studio affordable rental. So what would the people here, if chosen for or elected to the council, do to specifically try to get our city's development code friendly for builders who, there's a few of us out there that want to do it. We just need to be unleashed on this thing.
Richard.
A builder's council, very first thing. 3 or 4 folks from the builders groups who come in with their recommended solutions, showing us what are their time sinks, and where are the double charges, which engineering is just too much to bear, which permits are too ridiculous, which things are done serially so that they just create endless time for you, and which things we can take care of by bringing in that conservation corps I talk about and coming in and having them work at your site, no charge to you. You won't have to do with tractors what they can do with pick and shovel, and in turn we get trained up workers in the long run. But the real goal there is to get out of your way and find a way to make it cheaper for you, because I'm well aware that the thing that's stopping you is all those preliminary costs and time.
Charlie.
I know it is very frustrating for builders in the community with not only with the permitting process, but with the stormwater regulations and everything else going on. And I know the planning commission is working hard, but they need to get something done pretty quickly, because it's really creating a problem where builders are wanting to go outside of the city to build, and we can't keep having that. We need to have more incentives for them to want to build in the city, and better ways, faster permitting, and just work on a lot of the things that are slowing down the process of building in our community.
Nina.
Just like Charlie said, I really do believe that we need to look into cutting a lot of the permitting fees, because they are absolutely astronomical, and it really puts a damper on people who are trying to get permits to build. It's a huge cost. I also believe that we need to look into more incentives as well and see what we can come up with as a council together, and have some input from builders like you, because it's important. You're the ones out there doing the job. You're the ones that are out there with the struggles, and you know what the roadblocks are, and you bringing that to us and having a discussion with us is very important so that we can move forward and figure out what we need to do to help you out.
Navarra.
I think this is one of those times when as people said in the last question, it is really important to follow some kind of process. I think part of that is the Planning Commission. I think that the Planning Commission should be doing more to address this and address this in a timely fashion. I think, as Doc has mentioned too, this is one of the big issues, right? It's just inaction on different levels of city government, and that's a problem. I think one of the other things that City Council can do is when we're reviewing the municipal code and other codes, it's a great opportunity to say what is necessary and what really isn't, and that these codes and these fees that were implemented how many years ago, maybe they aren't relevant anymore. Maybe we need to readdress this and make sure that this works for our community as it exists now. I also think that the city can be doing more to develop actual partnerships with builders like yourself and development firms to make sure that that we're being collaborative partners. Thanks.
Martha.
Yeah, I went to the last Planning Commission meeting, and I know that the City Council is working very hard on zoning changes, and they would probably love to have your input. I'm sure they would. I think one of the things that we need to look at again is stormwater management. I think that I have a chart that shows before we put in stormwater management regulations and after, and there's quite a big difference in what it costs for permitting. And I also think that we could come up with some pre-approved plans that you could just go look through and choose from, that you could just go. You could just already pick those up and go to work. So those are two things that I would work on.
Brendan.
I do like the idea of a builders council. I think that's smart. I'm surprised that the council hasn't already done that. It seems like a very logical thing to do. The idea of having like cookie cutter houses, I think that would destroy the look of Port Angeles. I think Port Angeles has a very diverse housing look. But we do need to streamline the permitting process and bring in people who know. Like if you want to know about marketing or advertising, let's get a council for that. I can help on that, but I'm not a builder. You're a builder. We need to get builders building and giving us advice on how to get builders building. It's very simple.
More questions? Now, last time I said that, 2 people jumped up. Well, I'll ask a question. Yes. If elected to the city council, you'll be one voice of 7, one vote of 7. How do you plan to work with your fellow council members to get things done? And it's time to start with Navarra.
I think it's really important to recognize that City Council is nonpartisan. I think this is one of the really big benefits to our community, is having elected officials who are voted in to represent the entire citizenry. I think that this allows for people of all walks of life to be able to contact City Council and let their voices be heard. I also think it allows for better communication and collaboration with people who might be on different political aisles than you. And I think that that's important. I think that there are always issues that you can come together on, and that keeping an open mind and listening is something I've really learned the value of, both in my college days, learning ethics, and also as a nonprofit administrator.
Nina.
I think just being able to sit down and have a discussion with one another and not making it a personal issue, but making it a community issue. And even though we may disagree, which it's actually pretty healthy to disagree, but let's come together and discuss our differences and figure out if we can't go one way or go the other way. Let's at least find a middle ground where we can all agree on something and move forward and even try to work and improve that later on if it is a continued issue. I believe that, you know, you give each other, it's just human decency to listen, talk, discuss, and then try to come up with a solution and move on without any of the extra junk. We don't need any of that in meetings or against each other, because we're here for the community, and that's what our job is to sit here and figure something out to help our community.
Brendan.
I'm really good at communicating with people, I think. But I'm going to be honest. I go with facts and data. And if you come and you're trying to argue a point that's baseless, factless, or just false information, I'm going to call you out on it. And you can expect that from me, honesty.
Martha.
Well, my experience on committees and so forth is that people generally want the same thing for their community. They want people to thrive. They want to take care of things. And it's just a matter of bringing out the best cases and the facts. And I think that if the partisan politics is played down a little bit, there's a lot of potential to come to agreement. And basically, we all want Port Angeles to be great.
Charlie.
You know, I've got quite a good bit of experience. I supervise union workers, and I've learned very much so how to listen and cooperate and understand what people's needs are. And I think healthy communication is key in any type of discussion. You know, my wife has taught me how to listen, and I know very well how to listen, shut up, and don't try to fix it. Let's all listen, have a healthy discussion. We're like a family up here. We should be. The city is what's important. I think public comment is very important. That's what we have to bring to the table, what you want, not what we want. It's all about what we want. Bring research, facts, and then build consensus. So, thank you.
Richard.
If we don't focus on taking positions, but rather on keeping our eye on the ball, keeping our eye on the community ball, what we all want, what we all can agree on, then you can find the room for compromise. You may have a different position on a thing than I do, but we probably have some common ground in our work and our beliefs, and we can find agreement on those elements. That's where you build from, and that's what makes a collaborative government strong.
Thank you, candidates. To wrap this up, we're now going to move to our candidates' 2-minute closing statements. We'll reverse the order from the opening statements and begin with the candidates from position 7. And that would be first, Brendan Meyer.
Okay, yeah. Thank you guys again for having us. This was great. My big thing here and why I'm running is also to bring transparency, better transparency to Port Angeles City Council, and so we can hold our officials accountable. It's been too long. We don't have, Dwayne Morris during the Planning Commission meeting made an impassioned speech about how these Planning Commission, they're making changes that are going to affect everybody. And these are public meetings, but people aren't showing up, and neither are the video cameras. And so you have to listen to a very archaic way of listening to these through audio only. So there's a thing in the CFP here to change the facilities security projects. They're changing locking key out where key swiping. It's going to cost $112,000. For way less than that, we can have video cameras here recording, archiving. The county's been doing it for 3 years. The city needs it. And that's, you know, I hope that when November 5th comes, that it's your choice and it's our community, and I hope that you choose to elect me to City Council. Thank you very much.
Martha Cunningham.
You've heard me talk about my experiences and my education, which I would bring to the City Council. And I've told you about how I see the city as having many assets that I would like to use for business growth. The other part of the picture is why I decided to run for city council. The short answer is that it follows my lifelong passions, which are community service, legal advocacy, and business development. I get really excited about growth and making real change happen. I'm a lifelong teacher, a lifelong learner, and I'll continue to advocate for those who can't stand up for themselves. I will work hard and make sure that my contributions are well informed and try to make the best well thought out decisions. I hope you will vote for me, Martha Cunningham, for position 7. Thank you.
The candidates for position 6, we'll start with Navarra Carr.
Thanks so much to the League for hosting this. It's such a vital community resource that you provide, and thanks to everyone for coming out. It's really encouraging to see folks who are caring and engaged, who will spend a Tuesday evening sitting here with us, and I just want to thank you. If elected to Port Angeles City Council, I hope to increase our ability to seek community-minded policies that affect positive change. I believe in service. I believe each person has a role to play in our community and has the opportunity to make their city better. My experience living in many rural areas across our country lets me bring a unique perspective to the Port Angeles City Council that builds upon my life experiences. If elected, I make a commitment to listen to the diverse perspectives here in our community, to seek common ground when we disagree, and to act upon policies that make Port Angeles stronger and more resilient. I would be honored to have your vote in November. Thank you.
Nina Napiontek.
The unique attributes I believe I can bring to City Council are based on my lifelong connections to our community and the experiences I've had growing up and choosing to raise my family within this community. Many of the issues we've discussed in this forum, I've either observed at a close hand or experienced myself. I learned through direct experience, and I'll bring that to bear on the challenges that we face while practicing flexibility in listening to different perspectives and a willingness to have transparent conversations to implement positive, viable solutions for our community. I truly do believe that if we're willing to work together and get our hands a little dirty, we can come up with some great solutions to help out each other and our community. Thank you.
Candidates for position 5, Richard Robinson.
Thank you. As your candidate for City Council, you can label me aggressive. I am not, and I hope you are not, happy with the way things are going in our very beautiful town, and they should be going far better given where we live, between the beautiful mountains and the sea. So what's going on? So employment is up, yet people are losing their houses because rents are going up faster than wages are. We have a workforce that contractors can't count on. They can hire them, but then 3 days later they don't show up. These are combined problems that we need to go at. So my focus as a city council person will be to do everything I can to help development, to help retrain our workers, to get that work sense back that was here. I don't know where it went, but it went somewhere, and we need to bring it back, that strong work ethic. And to build those 2,000 units. We're short 2,000 units right now. That's a lot of housing, and it's a lot of employment, but if we don't do it, we're just going to have worse homelessness and worse drug abuse, because those are the symptoms we get when we're failing ourselves. Thank you.
Charlie McCaughan.
Thank you. My experience in public service the last 15 years with PUD and the City of Port Angeles, I feel have given me a unique set of skills and expertise in not only running the city, but also helping at a city council level. I presently supervise procurement and materials at the PUD. I hire contractors to keep district facilities in good repair, and I work with state and federal environmental agencies to make sure the district's compliant. I find public service very rewarding and would like to take it to the next level. I'd like to be your voice in city council and bring your concerns to the council. I have the opportunity in my career right now with my private life and my career to be able to put all the time and dedication it takes, because this is not just a sit at the council job. We have a lot of hours you have to put in, and it is something I'm ready to do. I believe in transparency to the public and being open-minded to every concern brought to the council. I find that's very important, public comments, and I support all our local police, fire, and medical responders. I'm very excited about the future of Port Angeles. I do realize we have issues, homelessness, addiction, housing, but I really feel if we all pull together as a community, we can find some answers to these issues. I'm really committed to whatever it takes to do whatever we need to do to be proud of this community for decades to come. So, Charlie McCaughan, City Council, Position 5, and this seat feels really nice, so thank you.
All right, let's take a minute and applaud the commitment and energy and dedication. Thank you very much, candidates. Now, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Now, you heard a lot of conversation about the affordable housing ballot measure. Next, we're going to have somebody come and tell you all about that and give you a chance to answer questions. So please stick around. 10 minutes, we'll come back at 7:30. If you are actually leaving, please fill out an evaluation form. Yes, please. We need that. Glad you came. All right, and glad you stayed. Welcome back. Port Angeles residents will see Proposition 1 on their November ballot. You'll find this language on your agenda, but I'll read it to you as well. It says, the City Council of the City of Port Angeles adopted resolution number 14-19 concerning a proposition to implement a sales tax of 1% to be used only for construction of affordable housing or funding the operations and maintenance of new units of affordable housing and facilities where housing-related programs are provided. The question will be, ask the voters, should this proposition be approved, yes or no? I mentioned earlier that we were unable to find somebody to speak in opposition of the proposal or the proposition.
What about one of the candidates?
Well, what? Yeah, I mean, one of many. I don't know. Can we? I don't know. That we haven't planned that. So, those candidates who are in the audience can ask questions. Okay. All right. Let's do that. Yes.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah. All right. We do have Mike French here, who has agreed to speak about the proposition. And when he's through, we will open it to questions. So go ahead, Mr. French.
Okay, so I have a little short introduction and then a disclaimer. So my name is Mike French. I'm a local business owner. I was born and raised here in Port Angeles. And I'm also an elected member of the Port Angeles City Council. And so I want to make it clear that tonight I'm not speaking on behalf of the City of Port Angeles. I'm not speaking on behalf of the City Council. I'm here as a private citizen who is concerned about housing issues and homelessness. So first I'd like to thank the League for putting on these forums. I know that this is a ballot measure that has gotten some attention in the candidate forums, but I think deserves its own forum, and it's kind of flown under the radar on that level. So I think it's good for voters to have a chance to ask questions and have their questions addressed. So the basics of Proposition 1 are this is a 0.1% sales tax that would generate around $300,000 of revenue per year, and that's a ballpark estimate. And that would be spent by the city to build or rehabilitate affordable housing projects, as you just heard, or to help build the public infrastructure that those projects would require. And I would also like to point out the city has prepared a fact sheet so that, and I've placed some on the tables out there, so if it addresses a lot of the technical details that I'm sure will come up. Housing is an important issue to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. Some approach it from a home buyer's perspective, some from a renter's perspective. Some people are concerned about homelessness. Some people are concerned about the character of their neighborhood. Some people hear stories from other communities about people living in RVs or tent cities springing up, and they worry that that activity might happen, in Port Angeles on a larger level. I became interested first as a business owner. I had young employees that were working for me that were making more than minimum wage and were making good life choices and still couldn't find affordable housing. And so as I got more involved, I'm on the county's homelessness task force. And last year I was challenged to spend a night at the Serenity House homeless shelter, which I did. And through a lot of research and those lived experiences, I've come to believe that one of the fundamental problems is housing supply, that we need to build a lot more housing units, especially what's called supportive housing. And supportive housing brings all the resources people need to deal with the different challenges in their life to them, and then it helps connect them to the right help. And in communities where we've seen supportive housing made a priority, those communities have had a lower, they end up saving money for the taxpayers, and they end up reducing homelessness. So the last point I would like to make is this one tax increase or measure isn't going to solve homelessness. I do see it as one tool that's a low-cost way to our local taxpayers to provide revenue, to build housing units, to leverage that money in a beneficial way to our community. So I encourage people to vote yes, and I welcome your questions and comments. Thank you.
Okay, Barbara is our mic holder. Remember, she's the holder. And line up for questions, please. And again, I'll ask you to be brief in your questions. No political speeches. All right. Start by stating your name.
Hi, my name's Ed Chad. Thank you for holding the forum. So, Mike, you said that it's not going to solve the whole problem, but I'd like to get some sense of how much of the problem or what parts of the problem might be able to be addressed by the measure. My understanding is that it would last 20 years. Anyway, if you can sort of look at the whole span of what the program might be able to do and perhaps paint a picture of what some of the possible additional advantages might be, more specifically.
So that's a very good question, and I think that that's relevant to a lot of voters. I think that this is an issue where we're going to need a lot of tools. And so this is one tool, and I think this is a particularly collaborative tool because what the city wants to do is find partnerships with nonprofits, with private developers that want to do the development. And then we will be a partner, find ways to leverage this money into more gains. And I think that when it comes to homelessness, I think that there's a lot of externalities that homelessness brings. And so even a small amount of a solution sometimes can create a large amount of community benefit. So, it's hard to say what the scope will be. I know that this is not going to be a very quick solution because it will require time to develop a reserve that we can then spend on competitive grants to developers. Those developments will take time to build. So I see this as a long-term solution that is actually going to make a big change in the long term because a lot of the solutions that we've come up with often just kind of maintain the status quo or maintain the lifestyle that people are leading rather than being an actual real solution to the problem. And I'm coming up on time.
Okay. I may not have mentioned that Mike is being allowed a 1 minute to answer the question, and
Try harder.
if we need if we need a little more, let's see, because it sounds like a very important question answering here. Your name?
Brendan Meyer. This is a two-parter, Mr. French, but the way I see it, the way I read it is that the This needs to be, the plan needs to be put together by April 2021, otherwise you won't get the qualifying tax money. Also, the county doesn't have to have a vote in order to pass its qualifying tax. They could just do it if they want to. Also, is this $325,000 including the county with the city?
So the $326,500 is the estimate that our finance department has come up with what this 0.1% sales tax would raise. So that's one issue. The other issue is about how we leverage that money. One of the ways the state has authorized us to leverage money is through something called House Bill 1406, which is a larger housing bill that came up with a lot of tools for cities to address housing. One of the tools they came up with was a tax credit on sales tax that's separate from this. So it gets very confusing very quickly. That allows us, what we've done is already said we intend to try to take the tax credit. The tax credit's doubled if you have a qualifying local tax. That's what Proposition 1 represents. So $325,000 is what we're voting on. If we vote yes, we will double the amount of tax credit that we would get from around $20 or $25 or $30,000 to $50 or $60,000. So that's just an additional pool of money that we would, have access to. There's drafting issues in House Bill 1406 that you kind of alluded to that I think would be moot if we pass the qualifying local tax. So that's kind of it makes it even more complicated. And if people want to talk to me about that afterwards, I'd be happy to explain it because I went through multiple hour sessions at an AWC, Associated Washington Cities conference explaining how to House Bill 1406 because it was kind of so complicated.
All right, next question.
Marilee Smith. I'm really wondering why the city moved to do a tax to start with when we have nothing on our books for warming centers when it gets too cold in town, which most towns around the country have of our size. They open up warming centers in city buildings when the temperatures become inclement for too many days. We completely rely on nonprofits to maybe do it or maybe not do it. There's a lot of suffering in our streets. The other thing is we don't provide any free garbage service for any of the homeless guys, and you can't throw away trash in anyone's garbage can. That is still illegal in this city. We haven't enacted anything that would really help homelessness, but meanwhile you're asking for money without a plan behind it. That seems strange to me. Can you please explain why?
So, I think that right now you're correct. The city does kind of rely on nonprofits to do all of the, humanitarian work around homelessness. And I mean, on a political level, I probably agree with you that the city needs to do more. On a problem-solving level, I think that Proposition 1 is trying to actually solve the problem because housing is the central issue. So, one thing that I would love people to research, look up Salt Lake City. They are a city that took homelessness almost to zero. They're still having struggles with because of funding issues, but one of the things that they are doing is actually removing some amount of their homeless shelters and replacing them with supportive housing. Because what they see is the kind of services that you're providing are really relevant. If you're providing services that, and I mean, this is something that it gets very controversial very quickly, and I don't want to offend anyone, but if you're providing services that maintain the lifestyle of homeless people, a lot of people in our community are concerned that attracts more users. And I understand that concern. I want to solve it. I want to actually do something that gets people housed, and what gets people housed is building housing. And so that's something that I think is almost too simple for some people to accept, but when people are homeless, what they need is a home. I think they have immediate human needs that sometimes we do need to address as a community. Our nonprofits do that work, and it is very thankless work often because the people that they're serving are not as easy targets for compassion as some other people in our community. I respect that work and I want to help do that work, but I want to actually solve the problem by building housing for people that need housing.
More questions? Is this a reluctant question?
I'm getting mixed up in my head, but Ed Chad again. So to follow up on one or two things, and is there a reason in terms of timing that Mike needed to be limited to a minute?
Well, actually, we've adjusted ourselves so Mike can
Kind
have
of
more
blowing
time.
through the minutes.
We've
Okay.
done that.
So I mean, I guess as one thing,
Yeah.
it would be nice if at the end you could let Mike talk more
Yeah.
about whatever he wanted to. But at
Yeah.
any rate,
That's dangerous, Ed.
yeah, it might be. So far, I'm enjoying it. Well, and can I ask a couple things if I have them on my mind?
You can ask one, and then you can wait till after the
Okay,
next
got it.
question, all right?
So in the walking around and talking that you've done, the night that you spent out on the street and at the shelter, tell me what you've learned from talking with folks who don't have shelter that would, that this measure could really do something about in their lives, even if it may take a few years to get there.
That's a great question. I'll answer that question. First, I'm going to start with a quote that I heard first from our Deputy Chief of Police. And he said, the prerequisite for being a homeless person is first you have to be a person. So the first thing I learned is that these people have humanity. These people deserve basic respect. I think a lot of us don't even like making eye contact with homeless people. And that's something that, so the first thing is we need to respect their humanity. And that's like I said, a lot of our nonprofits do a lot of good humanitarian work. I think the city absolutely could be a better partner. But I think that the supportive housing is the key. That a lot of these people, that I encountered don't just have one thing that prevents them from being housed. So, the simplest way to understand homelessness is you don't have enough money to be in a housing unit, right? Because housing costs money. But for a lot of these people, they don't have enough money to be housed, and they have a mental, illness condition that prevents them from succeeding in being housed. They have medical conditions, or they have, drug use or alcoholism that prevents them from being successful when they're housed. And so that's where supportive housing, I think, is the long-term solution. Where, and I think I would also like to say this is the only thing that's really been shown by data to be a long-term solution. And this is something where I think it's really important to understand that this really is a nonpartisan issue. It was the George W. Bush administration in the early 2000s that adopted Housing First as a federal policy, invested a lot of money in supportive housing nationwide that led to reductions in homelessness. Where we've fallen down, I mean, there's a lot of, then we had a housing crisis in 2008 that complicated things. But where we've fallen down is not pushing forward with supportive housing and funding it really robustly. And that's what worked for Salt Lake City when they took homelessness basically to zero. But it's an ongoing, constant problem. People are constantly entering and exiting homelessness. And so there's a lot more. We have other questions, but that's kind of where I see is supportive housing is really the key.
Okay, I'm going to, while you're waiting, that's okay. I'm going to read a question from the audience. Why was a sales tax the preferred method to raise money for affordable housing as opposed to a property tax or business tax, for example? Sales tax is a fairly regressive tax, hitting low-income people harder than others.
So I agree that sales tax is, by definition, regressive. Our state does try to make it less regressive by exempting things like food. I think that property tax is, just as problematic as sales tax. But the main reason is that we have a burgeoning tourist economy, and this allows us to share the burdens of this tax with our visitors and with people that are coming in from outside our community and shopping and spending a lot of money here. And so this is a way to really lessen the impact on our local taxpayers that I think is really valuable. They're already very highly tax burdened with, one of the interesting things is when you're rent burdened, you're also probably going to have problems paying utilities. Utilities and all these other things add up. And when you're talking about property taxes for school districts and for pool districts and for hospital districts, I think that we're already pushing the limits on property tax in our community. So I think this was a really smart decision by the city council to make it a sales tax rather than a property tax, because it does, allows us to share the burden with all of the tourists that are coming in from outside our community. And we're already, as our fact sheet points out, we're already really competitive with other local jurisdictions when it comes to sales tax. Squim, I think, is already at 8.8%. Jefferson County, I think, is at 9.0%, along with City Port Townsend. And so I think this is an opportunity for us to stay competitive and to, find a way to lessen the impact on our local tax base, which is already very, very burdened.
All right, next question.
I'm Matt Miller, Mr. French. I have an algebra question for you.
Okay.
That's kind of true. You mentioned, that to be homeless is to not have enough money to be housed, and that there's also sort of a revolving door of homelessness. So, all kidding aside, if X is the amount of money someone needs to be above to be homeless, and X minus 1 means you're out of your house, well then, by making a regressive tax, like a sales tax, or even a property tax for that matter, aren't we at risk of taking people who are just above the line and essentially creating more homelessness by taking away that extra dollar?
All right.
I would say that, I don't think that that's a pressing concern personally. I think that, there are people that are on the edge, but building housing supply lessens the burden that everyone is paying for housing. And so in the long term, I think that, one of the main issues that let Salt Lake City be successful is because they already had fairly low housing prices. And so I think that investing in ways to increase our housing supply reduces the burdens that everyone pays for rent. We have a really low rental vacancy rate. So I think that's the thing that's pushing people out of housing, not whether they pay a penny more on a $10 purchase of sales tax.
All right.
Marilee Smith. Port Angeles has made some interesting decisions in the past, such as our fiber optic that was run by the Obama administration to revitalize communities was given to a private concern in Port Angeles, who later sold it, even though the city had right of first refusal and could have made it an ISP.
You're leading to a question on proposition.
Yes.
Okay.
So the question is, okay, we're going to a poverty level concept here where we're going to tax people to help homeless. What are we doing? What can we do to increase our economy here, since we kind of screwed the pooch when it came to getting high tech out here, which would have helped us immensely, because the real problem with homelessness is a lack of money and a lack of economy.
So I think that I would like to push back on that a little bit in the framing, because I don't think this is a tax to help homeless people. I think that the RCW makes it clear what we can spend the money on, and it's on housing, building and rehabilitating affordable housing units for people whose income is at or below 60% of the median income, and are persons with mental illness, veterans, senior citizens, homeless, or at risk of being homeless, families with children, so that's homeless families, unaccompanied homeless youth or young adults, persons with disabilities, or domestic violence survivors. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there. We have veterans that are homeless. We have veterans that are struggling with housing costs, that are housed, that are rent burdened. So this tax is not just supporting homeless. It's actually, one of the interesting things is, if you're a homeless adult without children, this tax does not let us spend money housing you. This tax lets us spend money housing people that are homeless families with children, or homeless unaccompanied youth or young adults. So, I don't think this is a tax to support homeless people. I think this is a tax to support people that are struggling with housing costs, that are in that lower income group of 60% of the median income, and have one of those other characteristics, that they have mental illness, that are veterans or domestic violence survivors, et cetera. And so to answer your question, I think that, I think the thrust of your question is about really trust in the city government. And I think that the city has made good faith efforts to address housing already with we appointed a housing task force. We asked builders, we asked real estate agents, developers, all sorts of people across the spectrum, nonprofits. We invited them into the room and talked to them about housing issues. And out of that came the Housing Action Plan. And then out of that, along with a lot of other input that had happened from private citizens, developers, and other people, came some of the changes that the Planning Commission is currently looking at right now for zoning. So I think the city has made an effort to say, we understand regulations and zoning and all these other things might be part of the problem, and we want to address them. And then at the same time, we think, the city council decided this was something that could be another tool to address it from a different angle.
Next question.
Yeah, one of the things that you say is that tourists coming in will help this tax, and it'll, gather more revenue. We have a lodging tax that had $179,000 left over after expenditures. Why don't we use that money instead of just putting it in the reserves?
So the lodging tax has very specific RCW requirements on how it can be spent, and it's supposed to be spent on helping provide room nights for our local hotels, which charge their patrons to pay the tax. And so it's spent on events and infrastructure that might, increase the tourism, which leads to more bed nights for those hotels that are being taxed. So I think that that's something, there has been proposals, and I think that it's authorized in certain areas of the state to spend that money on workforce housing. I'm not sure that's legal in Clallam County or in the city of Port Angeles to do at this point. So that's something that we could ask the state, hey, this is an area where we do have a tax that produces a lot of revenue. We've seen very large gains in the lodging tax over the last 5 years, as has the rest of the county and the peninsula. So that's something we could advocate to the state and say, hey, we think that we should be able to spend this on workforce housing, but that would be specifically tourism-related workforce housing. So, I'm for building all of the housing. I'm an all of the above kind of person. So I think that's a great idea if the state says, yes, this is a reasonable thing for communities to do. But then we'd also have to work with that committee and work with those stakeholders instead of just acting unilaterally and saying, we're going to spend all this money on workforce housing, when they've been spending it, I think, pretty wisely over the last bit on making sure that we still have a steady stream of tourists coming by marketing our area effectively, by investing in public infrastructure like the BMX track, by helping events that are running, like Crab Fest that's coming up, next weekend. So,
Additional questions from the audience?
I know is there already an idea of the exact mechanism that would be put in place to decide how the money would get spent?
So the city council has passed a resolution declaring their intent on how they would spend the money, which what that does is it directs staff that this is how we want the money to be spent, and so we can look at that resolution, but it's basically on. We don't want, what the city council said was, we don't want the city to be the builder. We don't think that's a skill set that we have, that we don't think that that's something that we would do efficiently. So we want to engage in partnerships. So what I think that the intent is of a competitive grant structure where people would say, hey, I have a project that fits the RCW requirements. This is what my project would do. This is how many units would be. And then the city would grant them money based on, how much money we have, making sure that we have reserves. And I think the other point to make is that leveraging is really important when we do that. And so as our fact sheet, which you can pick up a copy of, points out that, the state has the Washington State Housing Trust Fund and the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, and they give preference in funding awards to places that do have local money invested in projects. So that's a way to leverage that money. The city of Bellingham passed this RCW sales tax a little while back, and they've been able to leverage it at a 10-to-1 ratio. So for every $1 that's being spent out of their local sales tax, they've gotten $10 from elsewhere, from the state, from the federal government, from grants, to spend on their projects locally. So I hope that answers most of your question, but the basics are the city council has directed staff that they want partnerships.
I recognize Mary Lee.
So the city has excess property, correct? Can any of this property be used as part of this program? And could the city do a partnership? Because the city, if they're getting $300,000 a year, would certainly be able to pay mortgage.
So yes, the city does have excess property. We have certain properties that we've already declared as surplus, and we have other properties that we could declare as surplus. And I think that would be a really great way to leverage these funds. We have a really important thing is the city in the last year has been working on a blighted properties strategy where we have tools that the state has authorized that if we see, there's one house in particular that we've already been going through this process near Fairmont Avenue, where if the property has been involved in drug use and drug trafficking, if it's a public health risk, and if it's been, there's three criteria and it has to meet two of those criteria, then the city basically through eminent domain can forcibly purchase that property, clean it up, and then, so I see these working really well together. As we clean up blighted properties, which I think any resident of Port Angeles can think of a blighted property that probably meets two of those three criteria in their neighborhood pretty quickly. I can think of one downtown really quickly. I can think of one near my parents' house really quickly. Right now, the city doesn't necessarily have all the staff manpower to fix all of them, but we're hoping that this becomes like a rolling project where we go through one property and go through another property and go through another property. And I think that would be a great way to see, like I said, cohesion between these programs so that, hey, this property would be a great place to site multifamily housing that meets the criteria of this RCW. Who's a private developer that wants to do that? Who's a nonprofit that wants to build that? Is Peninsula Housing Authority interested? Is Serenity House interested? And so I think that, yes, the city owns a lot of property. Not all of it is necessarily buildable. There's a lot of sensitive areas in our jurisdiction. That's a geographic problem that we just have, but I think that would be a great idea.
Andy Moore. Forgive me, I may be the only person in the room who doesn't understand the last part of the proposition. But where it says, are funding the operations and maintenance of new units of affordable housing and facilities where housing-related programs are provided, what does that mean? What does that refer to?
So that's something that's in the RCW, and I think that would refer to, I think that refers to the supportive housing that I'm talking about. So it's funding it's one thing to build housing, but then it's another thing for people to be successful in that housing. And so that's where I think the supportive housing comes into place, where, again, the city does not want to duplicate the efforts of nonprofits in our community. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't necessarily have, I don't think, the staff or the know-how to run, supportive housing ourselves. And so that's where we would need those partnerships. But like I said, I think that it's one thing, I do think we just need to build more housing units in our city to provide housing for people. But it's one thing for the housing units to be on the market. It's another thing for people to be successful once they've been housed. And that's something that I know the people in the nonprofit industry will be happy to share a lot of stories about that a lot of times it is a struggle. And a lot of times people have a lot of just issues in their life that need to be fixed. And that's sometimes very thankless work. It's also very hard work at times. And one of the things that I think the city just needs to be a better partner in helping those nonprofits is they're doing work that's really valuable to our city in the long run. And one thing, being on the Clallam County Homelessness Task Force that I'll just share is at the last, I was in the room where Peninsula Housing Authority talked about their list, which is how many units they have, how many people with vouchers are available, and they fill up their list. There's so much more need than there is supply. Same thing with Serenity House. Serenity House was sharing how there's certain categories where they try to help the people that are at the highest risk the most. So if you're a domestic violence person, a victim of domestic violence, they want to get you housed before necessarily an able-bodied adult would get housed that doesn't have these issues. And so there's so much more need than there is supply. And then, like I said, even when people get housed, they need support. And so I think that's what that phrase is really referring to.
Thank you. Mike, we'd like to offer you the opportunity to summarize your points, make your final.
All right. Well, thank you. I'd like to again thank the League for hosting this forum. I really think that there were some good questions, some good back and forth. I appreciate you allowing me to kind of just talk without a timer. That's fun. And I think that this is an example of a really healthy democracy. So I appreciate both the candidate forum. I know how hard that was 2 years ago, and I appreciate this forum for this ballot measure. Housing, I think, is really fundamental to living a productive life and to being a productive citizen. And like I alluded to earlier, we saw how fundamental housing was to our economy when we had a housing bubble burst and the global economy crashed in 2008. And when people are overburdened by housing costs, it restricts their ability to be productive citizens and to be involved in our economy. And so really housing is connected to almost every aspect of our lives. It's a social issue, it's an economic issue, it's an education issue, it's a health issue, it's a transportation issue, and as we're seeing tonight, it's a political issue. So I think we have a lot of work to do as a community if we want a healthy housing market that provides opportunity for everyone at all income levels to thrive. There's a lot of different institutions that need to do that work. It's not just governments, I don't think. I think the private sector has a large role to play in that work. So does the nonprofit sector. And so what I want to see is those institutions working together to find cost-effective solutions that actually solve the problem, that have a mechanism of action that solves the problem in the long term. And I think Proposition 1 is a really useful tool that does those things. It's going to require partnerships to work, as I've talked about. The city is not going to be able to do this on its own. It's targeted to actually solve the problem by increasing our housing supply, especially in the realm of supportive housing. And it's cost effective to our local tax base because it's the sales tax that allows our tourists to help shoulder that burden. So I thank everyone for coming. I thank you for the questions. I encourage everyone to vote yes on Proposition 1, and have a good night.
All right. Before we close, are there candidates for other offices in the audience who would like to introduce themselves? There's one.
Hi, my name's Ian Nickel. I'm running for Charter Review Commission here in District 2.
All right. Yes?
Hello, I'm Wendy Clark-Getson. I'm running for Charter Review Commission, District 2.
All right.
I'm Mike French. I'm running for Charter Review Commission District 3.
All right. Anyone else? Someone there? Yes?
Marilee Smith, again, Charter Review District 2.
Okay, a lot of interest in District 2. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you for coming and introducing. To close this out, remind you, please fill out this evaluation. It is important to us. It doesn't take long. It has boxes or circles you can put on things. I want to, before you go, let me thank people who have been really helpful. Our two-timers in the front who have the most difficult job, unless you count the people who have to stay within the time. And thanks to Barbara, our wonderful mic holder, and Tim Bride. Now, because of him, we are going to, because of him, this is all on the, it's all taped, and you can go on the league site and see it. And people who have interest in particularly this issue, this was quite a long discussion on some of the points of it. So it may be something you might want to refer them to, in addition to watching all the other ones we have on there. Let's see. Thanks to the audience for informative and informed questions. If you want to stick around a little bit, or you want?
I also just want to let people know that I printed out some fact sheets that are out there. So
that sounds like a
take
good
them and
one.
distribute them if you like.
Paul Gottlieb is here from the Peninsula Daily News and asked me to give a shameless plug for the Voter's Guide, which is coming out this Sunday, right? This Sunday, Paul? This Sunday? 44 pages. Yeah, that's a lot, and 90 candidates, something like that. A lot of those are charter review people. So look in there for your, friends and relatives who are listening. Remember that in Washington, you can now register to vote up to and including Election Day, which is November 5th.
Yeah.
You can also go to votewa.gov to verify your own voter registration to make sure you're current. Ballots are mailed out October 16th. That's a week from tomorrow. And they must be postmarked or dropped in the drop box by November 5th. Remember to register and remember to vote. Thanks for, I bet all of you will. Thanks for coming.